Goldman's Currie says buy commodities dip.
I've never seen a market so long on conviction, but so short on position.
Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Mark is here with you for Arcadia Economics to end off this trading week, which for the average silver investor was an excellent opportunity to refine your skills in patience and standing up against the crowd and saying that the emperor is really naked. And along those lines, we did have a breaking story today because the legend himself, Jeff Currie of Goldman Sachs, did come out with some new commentary. Believe it or not, he even had time for another interview this week, which we'll get to some highlights of that. But I just thought everybody should know that Goldman's Currie says buy commodities dip with the bull case intact. So if you're reading that, just toss your metals into the ocean, even Jeff Legend Currie is on board with this one. In fact, the legend himself says the latest steep sell-off in commodities markets is buying opportunity, according to Jeff Currie, chief commodity strategist at Goldman Sachs, and really one of the sector's biggest bulls. And I'm smelling some bull here. That is definitely for sure because, gee, I wonder... Goldman is saying to buy. It reminds me of that scene from the end of The Big Short. Dr. Burry goes in and says, because he got that phone call, the Goldman guy said, Dr. Burry, I was looking at your positions and we've adjusted some of your marks. And one of the greatest lines in theatrical history where he says, I think what you mean to say is now that you've established a significant position for your own bank, you're ready to finally mark my trade accurately. And the guy just sits there in silence. I'm guessing that if we submitted Freedom of Information Request acts, which don't worry, be happy. Because now I'm in Mexico, in between hanging out with the trees and listening to the birds sing. I am writing up instructions so everyone could submit their own Freedom of Information Request act. So you're curious perhaps what Goldman Sachs was actually doing while they were issuing this commentary. I mean, you never know with some of these banks. I'm just remembering how on the day where SLV, of which JP Morgan's a custodian, set historic records, and by quite a mile, I might add, for silver demand, they were also putting out an article downgrading silver and the silver mining sector.
I don't necessarily think of JP Morgan Research as the smart money.
So you want to be careful on these things. As you'll hear even from Jeff in video form, I know this may sound shocking, but even Jeff was saying that he relies on the CFTC data. So that's why if you want to submit a Freedom of Information request, for example, we heard how the Deutsche Bank traders a couple of years ago were explaining their muscle and blade strategy, which seemed at least enough for even an American judge to award several people who have started class action lawsuits a nice financial settlement, of which the instructions for such a thing will be coming forthwith too. Great reason to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. But aside from submitting a information request against the CFTC or Goldman's chat transcripts or what they could have been saying, as here we see silver now dipping below $26 in the trading day. I wonder if Goldman has loaded up sufficiently. A lot of unanswered questions. I can only pose guesses. I did submit my concerns to the CFTC in several rounds of evidence. And even though I did have a promise from the director of media affairs to call me back last week, and she promised again this Friday and get me in touch with someone who could respond to the evidence, I have not heard back yet. But let's stop with those silly shenanigans and just get right to what I know you are all here. And what best of all, why don't we see, is the CFTC, should we listen? Well, let's see what Jeff Currie does.
No, actually, I find it a very surprising stat. You just look at the positioning data from the CFTC.
So there you go. Even Jeff of Goldman Sachs, he's looking at the CFTC data. Now, he doesn't in this interview comment if he's familiar with this CFTC comment.
And in many respects, the resiliency and the market structure of the futures market really were able to tamp down what could have been a much worse situation in the silver market.
Well, I know that Alicia Crichton of Goldman Sachs, who is part of the CFTC MRAC policy that votes on such things, along with convicted felon JP Morgan that got caught manipulating these same markets hundreds of thousands of times just less than a year ago. They vote on that policy. So might want to take that one with a grain of salt, even if the legend says so himself. But let's hear what else has been going on in Jeff's world.
So let's talk through some of the commodities plays. Are you bullish on pretty much all of them? I mean, and this is interesting because we are watching things like lumber and copper, which is down from its highs, to figure out, has the inflation trade already peaked? From what you're describing, it feels like there still could be a ways to go.
Well, we're arguing this is the early innings of a much longer commodity super cycle. When we think about the next 10 to 15 years and the demand for decarbonization needs, copper, aluminum, because it goes into high voltage transmission lines, nickel, silver goes into solar panels, and then you have lithium and cobalt. We call them those the big six metal commodities. Those are the ones that are going to be central to this whole decarbonization theme.
I liked that so much I was tweeting it out as you finished the thought.
Here's another interesting comment he mentions. The only thing that can fight real physical inflation is rate hikes, not talk of rate hikes. Certainly, as we've been talking about all week, I would agree with that. Although I know, if you're saying you've heard this before, let's just check in with one other insider on what goes on that Goldman research desk.
I mean, this was the head of, it was Goldman's research department. The head of trading for Goldman said, we don't listen to our own research department. I said, okay, that explains it.
So I think that pretty much does explain it. Again, whether there's a connection between Goldman's latest call and the way that the prices of the precious metals have been getting hammered in the face of 5% inflation. And boy, just wait until you see what the PVI number was. In either case, keeping with the theme to focus on the solutions, I will wrap up by saying that this video was sponsored by Kuya Silver, someone that I'm proud to be associated with the show, that's going and digging out silver, loading up like even Jeff Currie has recommended, given all of those solar panels that are getting added in the world. So with that said, thank you to Kuya Silver, and especially since David Stein of Kuya actually just joined me on the show recently to talk about how are the mining companies responding to this felony activity from the banks? Well, to find out, it's coming your way now.